Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the invite to come and speak today in Manchester. Bear with me with the IT a second. So, my last job for 3 years was head of maintenance on Western Route. There's 2,200 miles of railway and 1,500 people that keep the railway going. Every week we do 500 safe systems of work, and in a period of about 2 years, we had about 25 near misses with track workers. And every one of those near misses it was multiple track workers, it was teams. And one of the things I've never wanted to do, and I can't touch wood, or maybe I can if that's wood, is I've never ever wanted to go and speak to a family to say, I'm really sorry. And I got really close to it quite a lot of times. And I know there are people in this room that have done similar jobs to what I've done or led teams on or about the infrastructure who have either had to go and speak to families or indeed know people that have. It's, we take risks. And the presentation I'm going to give you now is that through technology and through data, we can eliminate risk. Human behaviours, one of the things it's definitely galvanised it in my mind in the last 6 months since I've been leading the task force, is that humans will convince themselves that what they're doing is okay, where hard facts will tell them that it isn't. And we have got, as Gareth said, we've got mountains of data which we need to get into intelligence in order to do or to remove risk and remove anecdote and not be exposed to human frailty. Anyway, I better get going because I'm going to have somebody hold a card up in a minute. So, last July, most of you will know what happened at Markham, and a few people inside Network Rail were asked to get together to understand what do we actually do to eliminate or significantly reduce the risk of near misses. One thing that struck me is that there was an absence of intelligence about why do near misses happen, where do they happen, how many people were involved, what were the root causes, what other interventions could we make to eliminate that risk. So one of the things I listened to, and I've had loads of conversations in the last 12 months, 3 years as the head of maintenance, but last 6 to 12 months in the pursuit of eliminating the risk of near misses. And like I said, anecdote is your enemy. I've spoken to loads of section managers and loads of frontline teams who say, don't worry, the flags are the safest thing. My mate, whoever he's called, he's great at this job. He'll look after me. The reality is, last year, 160 people were involved in near misses. 80 of those were being protected by a bit of a cloth and a stick. And that's the reality of it. Trains, as you all know, rattle around at in excess of 100 miles an hour, and they're not very forgiving. And it takes a split second, a loss of concentration, a change of conditions, and something dreadful can happen. Also, we convince ourselves organisationally that things are difficult and therefore the easiest way is to grab the flags. Another key risk area is we've moved quite a lot of work into line blockages where we use the signalling system to basically block the railway, but we don't additionally protect against a signaller error. So signallers like lookouts and me are subject to human frailty. And unless you've got some sort of additional protection to protect a line blockage, then they make mistakes. I would make mistakes if I was doing their job. And we can't leave ourselves open to the memory of a signaller who's trying to run a busy workstation, who then may inadvertently route a train into a line blockage where people think they're safe. So the slide on the screen at the moment, I love numbers. And what this tells you is the graph on your left, my right. We had 60 near misses last year, involving 160 people. But if you trawl the close call system and the operational close call system, we had a further 158 instances where something happened, but then the workers moved to somewhere else, but they didn't have the safe system of work that they needed to protect them against a train striking them. Now, previously, that information wasn't in any of the stats or the trends. So you can see now that in the last 12 months, over 700 track workers have been put at risk. It's a lot, it's a big number. And then when you start to plot where are they, when are they, what times of the week do they happen, with what kinds of work, under what protection, you start to see a different picture, or another picture, a more vivid picture. So if you look at the graph in the, on the far side, what you'll see is the near misses happen about 2300 at night, and to many of you here will know that's the time when we're generally placing protection. And also, there's a fairly good peak of near misses and operational close calls between about 9 o'clock in the morning and midday. It's also the time where the railways are busiest. It's also the time where we roster most of our staff, and it's the time where we schedule most of our activity. And you think, why would we do that? Why do we do it unconsciously, or do we do it consciously? And if you look at the corporate rostering tool, when we've got resource available, or if you look at the timetabling tools, or if you look at signal workload tools, we put all the risk in one place and then let it fight it out. And the result is that, near misses. Also, if you have a look at the times of the day, you can see, would you necessarily want to be on the railway on a Wednesday or a Thursday between 9 in the morning and midday? Because that's when that's when the peak of activity seems to happen. And we roster people and tasks very similarly to the way that we've always done it. But the timetable has changed. The railway's much, much busier. Gareth gave you a slide there where the post-privatised railway, the frequency of trains has gone significantly up. And those margins that were there before just aren't there. But we haven't rescheduled our work tasks, or we haven't implemented technology that we know that we've got, or we haven't challenged technology suppliers to understand how can we do that job without putting a human there. So this did happen. Gareth and Spike were undertaking tasks in South Wales. They didn't have adequate protection or warning, and a train hit them and it killed them. I sat with their families in October of last year, and I've got to say it's one of the most difficult days in my life, because they're looking at their lives have been destroyed. If you look, Gareth and Spike were nearing retirement age, and their wives were looking forward to retirement. That's completely shattered. One of the daughters is getting married, won't be walked down the aisle. And when you start to bring home the kind of human side of this, it's tragic. And we could and we should have done something about it. So my challenge to everyone here is delete anecdotes, get rid of anecdotes, get rid of risk. If you look at the way that we do work, the work that we have to do, have we really challenged ourselves enough to remove tasks, to reschedule tasks at the times where the railway's less busy? Have we implemented technology to protect either line blockages or T3 possessions? And the answer is, we haven't done it yet, but we're going to do it. So, Safety Task Force, I've been asked what are we going to do? It's a massive undertaking. I've had a lot of people say to me, you're the Safety Task Force leader, therefore this is your responsibility. But I have got some primary focuses. Not to say that they're my sole focus, but they're my primary focus. So, protecting human beings with a piece of cloth, I'm afraid it's going to be dispatched to history. And it's about time too. And for those of you who have encountered near misses, where lookouts have been, or lookout failure has been the cause of it, and you've spoken to people, or you've spoken to their families, or you know them personally, you'll understand why I'm saying this. Line blockages, we must take advantage of line blockages, but we must make them safe as well. There's no merit in moving work out of lookout warning into line blockages without additional protection. We do have near misses where trains are routed into what we perceive to be closed pieces of railway, and they're not closed. So we must provide protection for line blockages. And then we are going to align Network Rail. In the maintenance side of Network Rail, we undertake 28 million tasks a year, and we're going to align all of those tasks to safe access. Gone are the days where you can grab the flags or something of that order, and you can just get out there and get a job done. It can't be like that. After Margam last year, the Office for Road and Rail served 2 fairly wide-ranging improvement notices. It should be of no surprise to anybody. It was no surprise to me. I've read the draft of the notices in April of last year. And as the head of maintenance on Western, I'd embarked on a 2 to 3 year journey to eliminate task risk, to protect tasks, to remove unnecessary tasks, to innovate. But it's really hard. It doesn't just naturally happen. You've got rosters, you've got operational interfaces, you've got other parts of the railway. You know, there's all sorts of human reasons why things don't just literally click and you can make things safe. But the notices that we were served on planning and technology, they were served as a pair. They complement each other. There are 5 criteria in planning and there are 7 in technology. Okay. We must review our tasks. Now, I know that says maintenance reviews. The ORR inspections highlighted that the Network Rail maintenance teams by far are the biggest risk. If you look at how many, many of the private sector supply chain have eliminated open line working, and therefore they don't work in that way. Myself, I've worked in infrastructure projects. I've worked with track renewals contractors. Many of them now, for instance, you can't dig the track up unless it's shut. But many of them now have eliminated, so they've taken the lead, I guess. But maintenance is much harder. If you look at faulting, if you look at cyclical maintenance, if you look at the way rosters take place, we have thousands of people each day that dart in and out of trains to maintain, inspect and fault our railway. And if you look at where the near misses happen, Network Rail maintenance is a big risk. Another big risk area is possession support staff. And many of you will have probably heard of the event at Stokes Nest and what happened there. And I still find it bemusing that we use explosives to protect ourselves miles and miles away as an audible warning from unfitted freight trains that don't run anymore. So we've got to do something to protect our possessions that isn't lone or pairs of workers going out in the middle of the night to put explosives on the track right on the fringe of open railways that sometimes have got irregular services happening. We've got to modernise how we protect our railway for T3 possessions. And you see by the peak in operational close calls, marker boards put on the wrong line, detonators put on the wrong line, people went in the gate, turned left, should have gone right. You know, the whole. You look through the data and the accident reports. It's clear why these things happen. So we're going to review maintenance tasks. We've got to be careful not to overload signallers. There's absolutely no merit in shifting the site risk into the signaller locations. So we're going to make sure that we have absolutely solid line blockage registers, published additional protection, and that we work with the ops community to make sure signaller workload isn't compromised. Many of you will have heard of PDSW, and don't groan, or certainly not until you go outside. But we've rebranded PDSW as Planning for Delivery. We've got to get this right. We've got to make sure that safe system of work packs are concise, they're not too long. We've got to make sure that the people that get involved in the work have a hand in the planning. We've got to make sure that the line blockage system, the way we book line blockages, is transparent, is coherent with the timetable, and that we've got good feedback mechanisms to understand what actually happened versus what was planned, so we can continuously improve. And then with technology, obviously the theme for today, there are loads of things that we can do to protect track workers in possessions. So working on open railways, if you look at as low as reasonably practicable, train-operated warning systems in certain instances are a credible form of protection to track workers. They are not subject to human frailty, they've got the integrity of the signalling system, and therefore in certain locations, under certain conditions, things like train-operated warning systems, SATWAS systems, and other are credible forms of protecting our track workers. Also, implementing much more intelligent infrastructure. Gareth touched on it this morning. But also, if you look at the monitoring fleet, making sure that there's 5,500 miles of railway today where we manually walk it, but we run trains every 4 weeks and we can do it automated, but we haven't done it yet. So that we've got to target where we've got credible forms of technology and make sure that we get the value from it. So since July of last year, we have reduced unassisted lookout working by about 30%. This week we're at 18%, so that's somewhere in the region of 15,000 tasks this week on our railway are being done by teams protected by a bit of cloth and a stick. Which, when I talk about it like that, you think to yourself, why are we still doing that? When in many instances we don't need to. In doing that exercise, a lot of this is there's no silver bullets here. It's just good assurance, challenging and planning and identifying what we can manually do to align tasks to safer access. So that 30% drop has been achieved by doing things that really we should have done in the first place. But we've got to be careful not to shock the system. We've got to be careful because work, if you can't actually go in and do the work outstanding climbs, and that then becomes an issue in itself because you end up with infrastructure compliance risk, which could lead to derailments or dewirements or things like that. So you've got to make these changes in a really logical, orderly and sequential fashion. So you can see the bottom line, which is work outstanding, has climbed. The blip at week 40 generally happens anyway with Christmas or bad weather, so we see those kind of trends. But where I feel we've got to, with roster cycles being 13 weeks, we've gone up and now we're starting to come back down again. That's my take on it. But we've got quite a long way to go. Over the next 2 years, we will review all 28 million tasks in all of the 550 section managers, and we will link directly those tasks to a line blockage or a T3 possession, or indeed if we choose for a structured and risk-assessed way to have warning systems, they will be train-operated warning systems. They won't be flags. So using technology to plan safer interventions, eddy current for rolling contact fatigue examinations. We've still got quite a long way to go with that, but we've got the technology. We need to. There are some issues with it, but there are definitely some opportunities with it as well. Plain line pattern recognition, like I said, the Western route, which was my old route, had converted 1,500 miles of manual basic visual inspections to automated inspections. There's still another 5,500 miles nationally that can go live with the existing fleet and the existing timetable. I dare say if we got more monitoring kit and we could timetable it more efficiently, we could go up in terms of the amount of track that we can inspect with a train. Intelligent infrastructure. I sponsor the Intelligent Infrastructure Track Programme. I also sit on the Intelligent Infrastructure Programme Board. And basically, I can never see a railway in my lifetime where we watch it less. And if you look at the technology that's available to us, we're only going to ever watch it more. And if we can really mine the data and algorithms, I don't exactly know what they are, but they seem to solve everything. But if you look at it, where we can get to is a railway where we get alarms before things have broken, that we can plan an intervention, that we can date that intervention where we've got safe T3 possessions and access, and we can make a credible remedy with a good, safe plan before the trains are impacted. That's got to be all of our goal here. The trace on the far side, Gareth touched on it earlier. So every 2 weeks, more functionality is being rolled out from the Intelligent Infrastructure Programme. The cyclic top tool this week is being deployed into sections, and there are many, many more things with S&T assets, OHLE assets, and I do welcome, and I'll come on to it at the end of the presentation about standards and technology challenge. If anybody else has got any good ideas where we can remove human beings from the infrastructure to fault or indeed inspect it, I'm all ears. And to those teams that I've spoken to on the front line who think I'm trying to get rid of their jobs, I'm definitely not. There's plenty of work to do, but what we need to do is structure it in a different way so that we plan an intervention, we do it in safe access, we do it in a safe way. There's plenty of work outstanding, there's plenty of work arising, and there are many, many more things that we'd like to do, but we just haven't got the credible and capable resource to do the things that we want to do to make the railway better. So there's some of the stats there. Immediate opportunities, 5,000 more miles of eddy current. We measure it now. Why aren't we doing it? Challenge to any kind of route and regional colleagues. There's 12,000 more miles of risk-based maintenance for plain line track. There are people in this room that have put miles and miles and miles of G44 sleepers down at 30 per 60 foot with 300 mil of stone, yet we're still walking it every week. Why? Is my challenge, especially if you've got yellow trains rumbling around on top of it every 4 weeks that can do it for you. So, there are things that we can do to alter how we maintain our railway. Technology, renewals techniques, production techniques have changed, for the better. The quality control has changed, and therefore our standards, in some instances, our legacy standards that are there to inspect and maintain the old railway, dare I say it, and I would welcome thoughts from anyone in the room about how or where we've got legacy standards that are driving people to do things in risky locations that we actually don't need to do. There are 65,000 more S&T assets that we can move to a risk-based maintenance regime that we haven't done yet. And we've moved about 120,000 assets. We've re-signalled all sorts of the railway, and therefore there's new technology that we can either watch from afar, or it doesn't need as many things done to it as the old types of systems. So there's opportunity everywhere. S&C track, if you look at, going back to my earlier graph about near misses, there's a disproportionate amount of near misses that happen near S&C. Conflict points, the amount of standard tasks that exist at S&C locations. So 053 examinations, 054 examinations, and all the sorts of things that we do, facing point lock checks, all those things. What can we do to remove the need for a human being to go in the forefoot in a strike zone is my challenge to everyone here. There are many more things that we can do. A new report that I will have very shortly is how much of the railway have we, or the S&C portfolio across the country, have we converted to risk-based maintenance for S&C track, and we should definitely drive that up. It's efficient to do it that way. The other thing as well is we've got some really good knowledge on how we can schedule line blockages. And if you look at the 15,000 tasks a week that we need to move to safer protection, there isn't enough line blockages. So in other words, we need to do work differently. We need to save the safe access for the tasks that we absolutely need to do, and the tasks that we can innovate and modernise. We must do that because I guess many of you here, like myself, have come through an era where the railways got busier, but from a time where it wasn't so busy. It's a prosperous industry. I mean, Stephen mentioned at the start, railway is the place to be, but at the moment there isn't enough safe space to maintain and inspect and do the things on the railway that we need to do under the current standards framework. So we need to be different. Another simple little thing using technology is some very clever computer people, of which I'm not one. They've taken the Ellipse workbank and they've taken the possession planning system, and they can do an exercise to basically align tasks with safe access. So anecdotally and historically, if you went into a section and said, how well aligned is your plan, they'd say it's bang on. Okay, show me, demonstrate that that it is. It's one anecdote versus another. We can now definitely line up the standard tasks and the work arising with safe access in nanoseconds. Certainly, if you look at what I see, I've got Ian here, but in the eastern region, the Safe and Effective Working programme, which is more so manually aligned tasks to safe access, this has given rise to how do we technologically align tasks to safe access. They're blazing a trail on Eastern, but there are other route services IT, other technology developers that are very, very effectively aligning tasks with safe access. And then when you put that onto mapping software and you draw the additional protection that's around it, and then you can put an algorithm that balances signal workload, what you've got is a plan where the risks have been significantly reduced. And we must do that. And we are doing that as well. Additional protection around line blockages. The ORR and the Network Rail Board asked me how many line blockages do you take a period? No idea. We have no credible data that tells us exactly how many line blockages we plan, take, and additionally protect in a given day, week, or period. Now, that's not a place where we can stay. We are now getting data. We're building the data set on our understanding with line blockages. My estimate is somewhere between 10 and 50,000 a period. And I wouldn't bet any money on it because I just don't know. But we are building a data set from period 9, which is just before Christmas. We're building a much more credible understanding about how many line blockages do we plan, how many do we take, how many have additional protection, and of what forms. I see all sorts of perverse behaviours. You'll get a project turn up and they'll carpet bomb the line blockage planning system because if they plan 100, they might get 50, which then puts waste and rework into the green zone access planners, which then ties them up and they can't do other things. We don't really prioritise the work that we need to do effectively, so there's improvements that we can make there. And there's additional protection available right now that we just don't use. Gone out of fashion, perhaps? Who knows? But what we've done on axle counter areas, we've introduced in some of the routes risk-based EPR policies for line blockage protection, which generally take the form of any line blockages over 10 minutes, you must use EPRs as additional protection. They're not absolute protection, but they're more than what you add. So if they're there, you must use them. Remote T-CODs, so track circuit and operating devices. We have completely maxed out the supply chain with orders now, and we are... Donation to charity, perhaps? Yeah, so basically we're now deploying remote control T-CODs all over the country. Sussex, Wessex, LNE, West, everywhere. We are now deploying, T-CODs where you can literally pick up your phone. It's got a secure app on it. You can go out, take your line blockage with a signaller, click the button, and the signaller cannot route a train into your line blockage. The road is blocked. So we are ramping that up. Also, box technicians. And planned disconnections in solid-state interlocking locations. Many routes are recruiting more, and we're funding more box technicians. That's a sustainable and credible way to protect line blockages. And you can see the graph on the far side. In period 10, I think, well, certainly the data told me, of the very small data set that I had, we protected 5% of line blockages with additional protection. I've just taken a snapshot at period 12. I've now quadrupled the data set size for period 12, and we've got 23% returns nationally on line blockage data. And of that 23%, so that's 4,000 line blockages from that particular set, we've protected 17% of those line blockages. So 83% of line blockages don't have additional protection yet, but they will. And what gets measured does get managed. And certainly, as we go into period 13, I'm looking at a data set that's approximately 60% of the population of line blockages, and I'm anticipating a decent rise where this is getting measured, and in many of the near-miss reports that I've seen recently, additional protection was available but not chosen in the planning stage. Don't understand why. But we are going to heavily invest in additional protection. Also, we're going to wheel out some old friends, train-operated warning systems, and there are design organisations that are helping us to formulate quick-to-deploy train-operated warning systems. It doesn't need to cost £1 million to put a train-operated warning system in, and neither should it. There's innovative minds now that understand the signalling infrastructure very well that can hopefully give us some bolt-on solutions where the interlockings can be tapped into to provide train operating warning systems at a sensible cost. SAT-WAS systems, so semi-automatic track warning systems. So basically it's like a LAWS kit but with a treadle, and the treadle removes the need for a human lookout. And we can either permanently install the treadles, or indeed you can put them temporarily depending on the types of work that you're doing. So we're going to buy plenty of those as a blend of the solutions to warn track workers. We're developing other techniques as well to additionally protect. And again, if anybody in the technology supply chain has got any good ideas on how to protect T2s or T3s, or indeed worn track workers that don't involve human frailty. So we are developing the Lewis system. It's taken quite a long time, but I understand why. There are also remote disconnection devices that we're looking at as well, and other things that we're looking to develop to basically make protection easy and quick. Planning for delivery. So PDSW evolved. Planning for delivery now, we're on a 2-year journey. It starts again this week. You can see the little snapshot, the film where it says person in charge in the middle at the top. The principal's film was launched this week. It's about a 15-minute animation that anyone with a PTS card holder, or sorry, not anyone, everyone with a PTS card holder will need to watch before September. And we will use technology to interrogate the timetable system in the planning stage to publish line blockages. There'll be an online booking system for line blockages so we can see exactly who is doing what and where, and then what actually happened. The safe system of work planning system will be upgraded. There will be a big rollout in iPads so that we've got more concise packs that can be more easily checked in the planning stage, and also on site that we've got a better feedback mechanism when things happen. That we've got safe system work packs that then get sent back to the depots via iPads, and we can genuinely see what is actually happening on our site. The Markham investigation has clearly highlighted that our assurance and our feedback is not as strong as it needs to be. We've also got business objects. We can now marshal and present data at section, engineer, IMDM area, route and regionally and nationally, so that we can then genuinely provide assurance to those that need it. I was the head of maintenance, like I said, and it used to frustrate me to death that I couldn't see what was going on. I could not get the management information back. All I got was anecdotes, verbal, and that's not good enough. But the safety dashboard is now alive. Version 2 is imminent, and also we will feed in the technology that we are developing, that we are rolling out in a coordinated way in the next 2 years, to make planning and the delivery of work safer. The standards challenge, you would have picked up quite a lot from what I've said. There are legacy standards that mean that we do things too often when you compare the condition of new assets or the manufacturing processes. If I mine the data on task delivery with a lookout flag, I can tell you exactly what task do we repeatedly do with a flag. And what I'm happy to do is present that to technology suppliers and developers and innovators to understand what can we do to innovate, to negate the need to do that with a flag. And I'm more than happy to do that. And anyone in the supply chain and anyone here from Network Rail, this gets launched today. This is a spring standards, safety standards challenge. And in the context of, we're not looking to slash and burn standards. That's not what it's about. But it's to highlight where that we do things in a repeatable way too often that we don't need to do, and therefore we need to either modernise the standard, or we need to get proper variations in a risk-based manner to move away from a standard, or indeed fire the starting pistol on the 1 point whatever billion pound it is on more innovation to develop technology solutions. And that's my final slide. So that's me done. So basically, the safety task force, a good flavour of what we're going to do to plan better, to protect access better, to deploy technology more, to innovate our maintenance activities. And it goes beyond maintenance. It's all activities, works delivery, capital delivery, and all of our supply chain as well. So thank you very much.